What's going on, guys? It's Smidger here, and today I want to talk to you about something different. This is going to be a bit of a longer video, sort of video where if you wanted to, you could just have the audio and the gameplay is very much there just to give you something to watch. And that is the discussion that has recently been ignited by NoahJ456 in this tweet, where he essentially gives some controversial video game opinions. And the one that we're going to focus on, of course, is the most recent Call of Duties are better games than the OGs. And to a point, I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. I think the best way to do it is probably to break it down and to explain my points in terms of kind of categories that they fall into. And this is going to be a bit of a wild ride back into nostalgia avenue. Or if you've never been there, if you've never played the OG Call of Duty, settle down, because you're talking to someone who will defend them till the day she dies, but that doesn't mean that I can't see the good and bad in both eras. If we start off with maps, by far, OG Call of Duties takes this hands down. I don't think there's really anything that can be disputed about that. Yes, you had to pay for the DLC maps, but they were so worth it. If you take similar sized maps from either Modern Warfare 2, from Black Ops, from Modern Warfare 3, anything from that era, and compare it to now, there is just no comparison. That, like, they're in a league above. The locations you got to fight in, the way the maps were set out, how fluid the maps ran. They were all still pretty much 3-lane maps, but you could jump anywhere you wanted in between them with relative ease and without many choke points. Whereas if you look at most of the maps in Modern Warfare and Cold War, it feels very, very hard to transition from one side of the map to the other without getting cut off by someone holding down, a horizontal line of sight throughout the map. And that's a massive issue, because fluidity in maps makes a fantastic game. And I probably should point out at this point that when I'm talking about these points, up until the last one, I'm not including, the players within the game, within skill-based matchmaking, within all of that wonderful, wonderful stuff. We will cover that at the end. So this is purely from an objective point of view. The maps were far better in OG CODs. And Modern Warfare, Cold War, World War II have had some good maps. Black Ops 4 had some great maps, in my opinion, but they weren't a patch on old CODs. And you can tell this even more so because when you look at Cold War, if you look at the 6v6 maps that have actually been released kind of post-launch, the majority have been remakes. You've got Raid, Express, Nuketown. Nuketown will always be the far most popular game in any Black Ops game. We know this, but it seems to have kind of surged to a new level of popularity because people really don't like the new maps in this Cold War. And I wish we'd see some more 6v6 maps. I wish they would go back to the days of good map design, to put it bluntly. And the primary reason they haven't done this is because now more than ever they're leaning towards a competitive audience. And that makes sense. The COD League brings in millions of dollars for all of them. They're very, very reliant on it as a source of free publicity almost. The players themselves will bring in tons of viewership, revenue, a player base. Even if it is they only play league play, they're still playing the game. And there was a transition point between probably in that grey area where Advanced Warfare sits, where players had illegal spots because of the jetpack Call of Duties that they weren't allowed to use in league games, but these spots weren't exactly blocked off, so your average Joe could go out and use them, but COD players, professional COD players, weren't allowed to use them in Call of Duty. And that was a massive issue because at that point I think we started to really see a shift in the map design where invisible walls would pop up everywhere and that fluidity of the maps was kind of lost, and that's a real shame. That's something that is probably one of my biggest bugbears within the actual essence of Call of Duties when you look back over the 10 years since I've been playing, probably 11 years now actually. And that kind of brings us on to the weapons within the games. I think that current Call of Duties, excluding Warzone, have done far better at providing you with quite interesting and different weapons to use. They haven't always been the most balanced, but you could say that about, Modern Warfare 2, the UMP, the ACR. Like, those guns didn't move and they packed a hell of a punch. You know, the intervention with how quickly it scoped him. Weapon balancing in Call of Duty has never been a good thing. It's never been well done. It's just that the community is a lot more vocal about it now because of the larger platform that we all have through social media. I'd argue that most of the weapons are far more usable in-game in the more recent Call of Duties, Modern Warfare and Cold War especially, and that's great to see. You want variety in your weapons. You want to be able to run some wild weapons. You want to be able to, you know, unlock attachments for those kind of below top tier weapons. That's a fantastic thing. That's a fantastic thing. I don't think anyone can doubt that. I just don't think there was quite that scope for movement in the earlier CODs. You could use them for sure, and they were definitely usable. Like, they weren't difficult to use. I just think it is a more balanced system now, even with the wild kind of dominant M4 we saw in Modern Warfare, you know, AK-47 in Cold War, AK-74U in Cold War. The other guns are still far more viable, and you can still beat those guns in kind of most normal multiplayer lobbies, I'd say. Obviously, you are going to come up against some rather strange lobbies, but we will touch on that at the end. And I guess talking about variety of weapons leads me quite nicely onto the variety of game modes that we have in Call of Duty right now is insane. So you head back to like the early days of COD multiplayer and you were looking at Team Deathmatch, Domination, Headquarters, which I'd really like to see come back, Search and Destroy, maybe a couple of others, but there wasn't a massive amount of variation. With the exception of wager modes in Black Ops, you know, party game modes that have kind of declined in popularity in the recent CODs, we have a greater variation of Call of Duty game modes to choose from now than ever before. Cold War has a fantastic range of game modes, especially with things like Firebase, or was it Fireteam? Who knows? Combined Arms, you know, you've got those big ground war game modes if you want to play that. You've still got kind of like the OG game modes like Search and Destroy, Domination. You know, you've got Kill Confirmed, you've got Control. The chances are, if you want to play a certain game mode, the last two Call of Duties will have it, and that's fantastic. Variety's the spice of life after all. And that's just something previous CODs can't compete with. And that's no fault of theirs, that's for sure. Like, that's not their kind of missed opportunity or their weakness. It's just how the game's evolved, and we've seen more and more game modes rise to the surface. Of course, I'd love to see party modes back in rotation all the time. I'd love to see wagers back. Man, that wager system was unrivaled back in the day. I spent hours playing wagers on Black Ops. You know, I'd love to see these things back, but the current choice for game modes, we are pretty spoiled in current Call of Duties, and that's a great thing to see. It's a great place for the franchise to be in. That's a real positive that I think a lot of people forget. And then I think a lot of people forget because they're so busy complaining about the glitches within the bundles and within the customization options, just how much customization we do have now in Call of Duty, whether it is through the bundles or through the battle pass, whether free or paid for. You know, you've got all the camos, you've got multiple operators to choose from. That was unheard of in, you know, Black Ops, Modern Warfare 2. You could change like the camo on your gun and you could have some nice face paint in Black Ops, but the customization is wild, and that definitely came from that grey area of kind of Advanced Warfare and that kind of era where Call of Duty was in quite a weird place where no one really knew where it was going to go, but customization wise it really set the tone, and it's definitely carried through into the later CODs, and that's great to see because, you know, people expect a certain level of customization within their games now. That's just the way the market's evolved, you know, with so many big companies giving you so many opportunities to customize your character exactly how you want. Call of Duty had to keep up, and I think they've kept up really well, regardless of if you think the bundles are overpriced, whether you think that there isn't enough free content. Those are probably fair gripes to have with it, but the actual customization items themselves are really, really innovative, really, really cool, especially the reactive camos making a return in Cold War. I don't think you can have too many complaints there. But of course, the major complaint that everyone has with these new Call of Duties is of course the player base and skill-based matchmaking. Now, I obviously started playing Call of Duty back in 2011, so that was a fair old time ago. The player base has evolved, changed, grown since then, and those aren't bad things necessarily. It just means it's a very different experience to what I grew up playing and what a lot of like the OG Call of Duty players grew up playing. And that's been forced through a few different things. Obviously, people stop playing the game as much as they get older. You know, new kids come into the game, which is great. It keeps the game going. But also then, Call of Duty are so desperate to keep those new kids playing the game that they introduce skill-based matchmaking, or rather it's always been in there. They just cranked it up to 10. And that's really one of the main issues with these new games, is they can have, you know, all the best maps in the world. They could have all the best weapons, and they have some fantastic aspects to them. Their gameplay's really smooth. I really enjoy playing it when I get in a good lobby, but the player base just isn't the same. And that's a mixture of skill-based matchmaking and the player base themselves. Maybe I'm going to show my age here. It feels like kids are whinier than ever. It feels like they cannot stay in a lobby if they die more than 3 times in a row. Whereas in Modern Warfare 2 and Black Ops, you just kind of ride that lobby out and you just stick with it, and that would be that. You'd have a rough game and then you'd bounce back. And I think a lot of that comes from knowing that in the next lobby you're probably not going to get, you know, the same 3 or 4 players that are going to absolutely dominate, because you can back out of that lobby, find a brand new one, and it's going to be a brand new set of skill players. There's going to be, you know, a randomness to it that means you're probably going to sit about average in the pack, maybe just above, and that's going to keep you going, to keep you pushing on to play the next round. Whereas in Cold War and Modern Warfare, you know, if you're getting dominated, your team's going to leave, you're going to go triple negative, and then the game's going to do the exactly same thing to you again and again and again. And that must be demoralising as a, you know, a 12, 13-year-old kid having that happen. It would put me off the game as well if skill-based matchmaking was kicking my ass that much. And that's really where the main gripe of the game is. You could put all of Modern Warfare 2's content into a game, and if you still had skill-based matchmaking turned up as high as it is, you would still see so many negative reviews of it, so many people complaining, regardless of what you did to try and keep them entertained. And I think that's the main issue with new Call of Duties over OG CODs. I think they are better games in their build, in their design, in what they bring in content-wise, but they're not a better experience. And I think that's where the distinguishment lies, and I think that's why Noah, when he tweeted that out, was very, very careful to make sure he included the word game in that sentence, because the game is fantastic, but the player base makes the experience. And with that being said, I want to know what your thoughts are on this. Do let me know down in the comments down below. When did you start playing Call of Duty? You know, have you seen a shift? Let me know what you think when comparing OG CODs with new CODs. As always, if you did enjoy the video, make sure to give it a like. Subscribe if you want to find your way back. I hope you all have a good day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.